I'm Greg Tepper. That's Greg Powers. And this is This Week
in Cruton.
It's This Week in Recruiting with Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPowersCal. Follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at Next Level D1. Presented by our good chicken friends at Chicken Express. Powers, how you doing, man?
Great. Just happy to be here today. And really, it's been a huge week for not only news and sports news across the country, but recruiting. It was a huge week this week.
It has been a ludicrous week on recruiting. You and I have a very open and honest relationship. You know that you cover recruiting like really down to the core of everything. I am
big picture guy.
I'm big picture guy. And when I come away from a week being like, man, that was a really big week for recruiting, that means for you it was probably just like an atomic blast going off.
It was. There was a lot of big news, and we didn't even put all of the big news in the recruiting notebook this week. That's how stuffed it was. I mean, we'll run through all of the names, but Texas A&M got a commitment from the number 1 rated defensive tackle in Texarkana Pleasant Grove's Marcus Burris. Didn't make the notebook. TCU landed Hutto's Landon Watson. Didn't make the notebook. Cameron Brady flipped from Central Florida to Ole Miss. Didn't make the notebook. So, I mean, you can see what type of week it was.
It is a ludicrous week on the recruiting trail. Let's get to our normal signposts here in This Week in Recruiting presented by our friends at Chicken Express. Let's start with our prospect on the rise. Our prospect on the rise, we're going to Highland Park. And for the second time, it's Highland Park 2021 offensive tackle Jack Leyrer. Love the measurables here, 6'6", 270. You know who else loves the measurables? The Texas Longhorns, who offered him this week. He is number 53 in the DCTF Hot 100. And this is a guy who had 5 offers last time we talked about him. And now he has, I'm going to check the abacus here, 32. So I would say that prospect on the rise definitely qualifies.
Yeah, and what was cool is the last time that we talked about him, we said, hey, this was before we knew the whole pandemic thing was actually going to happen the way it did, and we would have no evaluation period at all. We said, keep an eye on this guy because in the spring evaluation period, he might blow up. And, well, there was no evaluation period, and he blew up anyway. So colleges from all over the country have extended him an offer, and the Texas Longhorns are still in the hunt for an offensive tackle in the class of 2021. So they stepped up to the plate this week and are going to try to woo him to Austin. But they have a tough job because Leyrer is one of those guys who has academics also in mind, and schools like Northwestern, Stanford, Vanderbilt are making a very strong play for him. So he's going to have to weigh his decision and to say, do I want to go to a Stanford-esque type of college or do I want to stay close to home playing the Big 12 for a school like Texas? So he's got options, and he's definitely going to take a look at some of the top schools in the country. 32 offers. It's not like he's got a shortage of options.
Yeah, we've got Highland Park kind of on our radar as, they're on our radar every single year, but they're an interesting squad this year. Some big pieces to replace and things like that, but at the same time, they certainly don't worry about left tackle because Jack Leyrer is going to be holding it down there for the Scots. Let's go on to our commit of the week, and now we get to the quarterback portion of the presentation. Our commit of the week is Katy Tompkins' Jalen Milroe. Quarterback Jalen Milroe. He is the number 15 prospect in the DCTF Hot 100. He's our number 1 quarterback in the state, and he flipped his commitment this week. He was heading to Texas. He is now heading to Alabama. We've talked a lot about Jalen Milroe. He's a special player, and needless to say, this is pretty big news for the Crimson Tide.
Well, we've talked about Milroe in the past. You had an opportunity to interview him as well, Tepper, and what I think that you'll notice, and you probably did notice this, and maybe you can talk a little bit more about your interaction with Milroe. He's a guy who's hungry to win. He has a competitive edge, a fire about him that I think makes him truly special. I would actually kind of compare him to Jalen Hurts in a way. He kind of is built similarly. Has that same competitive advantage that Hurts had at both Alabama and Oklahoma, and has a huge arm. I actually think, and this is indicated in the rankings, he's a better quarterback prospect than Jalen Hurts. He's the number 15 prospect right now.
The thing is if you missed it, we can go to our YouTube channel. We had an interview with Jalen Milroe and his coach Todd McVay. And the thing that I came across with him is you want to talk about a kid who you don't worry about when you don't have eyes on him. You know what I mean? This is a guy who has his head screwed on straight. This is a kid who's super, super bright, and a guy who look. You can look at the film and you can tell he can make all the throws. But when you sit down and you talk to him, this is a guy who is just really sharp. Like, he understands the game. He has a great and you talk to Coach McVay, and he'll tell you the thing about him is that he's already good enough right now, but he has that drive to want to get better. That, like, there's a fair chance that, like, he's got another step to take, which is crazy because he's already really good. And it's just that, to me, what sets him apart in my kind of experience with him is that Jalen Milroe is not only a terrifically talented kid, but he is super smart, he's super cerebral, and he's a guy who has that drive to win and get better. And when you put all of that in the stew together, I mean, that's a special, special kid.
Right, I agree 100%. And I think a lot of people kind of tab him as a dual threat type of guy because he can run and he's super impressive physically, but he's a pass-first guy. He's a guy who has a cannon for an arm. He was very accurate last year as a junior. I mean, this is a guy who was picking defenses apart. And the thing that I really, truly like about him the most is that he took a Katy Tompkins program that they really weren't that good. Not as good as they are now, certainly. And as soon as he stepped onto the field, that team changed. And I think that that's something that you really, when you're evaluating a prospect, can they make the team better? This is one of those guys who instantly is an instant upgrade when he walks into the quarterback room.
We're talking This Week in Recruiting presented by our friends at Chicken Express here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, #TF Today. All right, there is kind of a I feel like these two have to be connected because they have to do with the Texas quarterback room. We're going to go to our underclassman of the week. Our underclassman of the week is Southlake Carroll 2022 quarterback Quinn Ewers. He committed to Texas over the weekend. He is a guy who is arguably he's the number one prospect in the state in 2022, according to us. And he is, beyond that, there's an argument that he's the best prospect in the country. He committed. Jalen Milroe, not soon after that, flipped to Alabama. First and foremost, let's talk about Quinn Ewers. What kind of player are the Longhorns getting in the Southlake Carroll quarterback?
Well, they're getting, when you're the number one rated player in the country, that kind of encapsulates what type of prospect that Quinn Ewers could develop into. He's still got 2 years of high school ball left, and he really made a huge impact last year, his first year under center at, Southlake Carroll, which is known to be one of the most prestigious high school programs, not only in the state of Texas, but in the entire country. Plays against top competition week in and week out. And I think I said weekend, but week in and week out. So he's definitely getting tested every Friday night, that they play. They're going against good defenses. They're going against guys who can put pressure on him. And he's able to step up and lead a team in the face of that pressure. When you're the quarterback at Southlake Carroll, it's a big deal. Little kids look up to you. Families come to watch you play. The stadium's packed every Friday night. And he didn't really bat an eye to that, of players on the defensive side of the football. But I think the offense is going to be just fine with Quinn Ewers under center. And to put it into historical perspective for the University of Texas, he's the highest rated recruit to commit to Texas since Vince Young. So There you go.
Okay.
And Vince Young was the last quarterback to win a national championship at Texas. So the expectations are certainly going to be high for Quinn Ewers in Austin.
That's interesting about Vince Young. Okay, now for me, I'm a recruiting dummy, so I want you to help me connect these dots. To me, I see Quinn Ewers 2022 commit to Texas, and then I see Jalen Milroe, who was a 2021 Texas commit, flip to Alabama. Those come in relatively quick succession. Ewers and then Milroe. Am I crazy in saying that there's a connection there?
Well, I think that you even read comments. Like if you go and see the articles that we post on our Facebook page at Dave Campbell's Texas football, you'll see a lot of the conspiracy theories out there about, well, Ewers committed to Texas, and so Milroe flipped his commitment to Alabama because he was afraid of the competition in Austin. That's not true. Alabama's been a player for Jalen Milroe. As a matter of fact, there are those out there who have kind of paid attention to this stuff that felt like a decommitment from Milroe from Texas and then a commitment to Alabama was imminent. The timing of these things can always be perceived in one way or another based on when it happens. So, of course, because Ewers committed to Texas on Friday and Milroe committed to Alabama on Monday, it's going to kind of give the perception that that's exactly what happened, but I don't really necessarily think that's the case. I think that Milroe is probably going to commit to Alabama, and the timing just did not work out in his favor because it now looks like he flipped because of Ewers, and I don't think it's true. That's Greg Powers saying that. I don't think that's true.
I think that's a natural question whenever you see that, when you see a really, you see those kind of connections, especially when there can only be one quarterback, basically. But in any case, let's get to our recruit of the week. Our recruit of the week is Katy 2021 running back Brandon Campbell. Of course, Brandon Campbell transferred from Lamar Consolidated over to Katy and was going to be the number one running back there for the Tigers. I say was because he is going to opt out of his 2020 season because of safety concerns surrounding COVID-19. I would imagine that there are other players in Texas high school football who have made a similar decision that we just haven't heard about. But this is the biggest name to drop that news so far. I would probably imagine it won't be the last, but I'm interested. This is a guy who's a USC commit. He's a star, the 51st rated prospect in DCTF's Hot 100. This feels like a pretty big deal.
It is, and for those that want to read more about this story, and I think it's definitely worth the read, please check out texasfootball.com/recruiting and read the article that William Wilkerson put up covering Brandon Campbell's thoughts behind why he made the decision to opt out of the 2020 season and enroll early at USC. It's a very good story, kind of gives you a behind-the-scenes process and a look at Brandon Campbell's thoughts surrounding that. But to me, I think this is just a big story in and of itself, and I'm certain that we'll see more of this as the season approaches, as things unwind. And one thing that I really found interesting is the support that he received, not only from his teammates, but other recruits in the 2020 cycle, other players nationally who supported his decision, and, of course, USC's coaching staff to support his decision to opt out, because that's an interesting subject in and of itself, because I'm sure USC wants to see his development as a prospect on the field, but they've obviously seen enough from him to offer him a scholarship, let him commit to USC, so they know he's a great talent. So supporting his decision to take the year off, come into college with what I would say less wear and tear on his body is never a bad thing for a running back. And we'll just have to see how that unwinds. I mean, this is like we've talked about in weeks past, everything that we're dealing with now is the great unknown, or things that we've never had to deal with before. Does translate, and we'll be watching Brandon Campbell and his development as he transitions to USC very closely.
It's going to be really interesting to watch, as I said, and this is not a fun prediction to make, but I would imagine he's not the last player to say, you know what, I'm just not going to play my senior year. There was actually to put in, to put in another example, we had a moment there, I want to say last week or 2 weeks ago, again, time has no meaning, where Caden Salter, the quarterback for Cedar Hill, sent out a tweet, and I think the tweet, all due respect to Caden, I think the tweet maybe wasn't phrased exactly perfectly, because it scared the heck out of me, because it seemed like he was opting out. He's a Tennessee commit. We talked with him on QB1 presented by RepCVR. It seemed like he was opting out of his senior year. He then says, no, I'm not. He's just going to enroll early. But I think that kind of got our dander up of okay, that might be something that could be coming down the pike for some other big-time prospects.
Well, I read the tweet the same way as you did. I thought the same thing when I read it, that he had decided that he wasn't going to play his senior season. But these things kind of have a domino effect, because there are recruits out there who are doubtful about playing this season. And they're going to watch this situation unfold very closely, because they're going to see what repercussions there are now for Brandon Campbell and if that benefits them or detracts from their recruitment. So I'll be interested to see, too, are there any other top recruits in the state of Texas, and not only in the state of Texas, but across the country who will now decide, you know what, maybe it's not safe for me to play this year. I should, bank it and head off to college. And there are some players in some states who don't have the luxury of opting out because their football season has been canceled. I think I remember reading about a top running back prospect in Virginia who is committed to Ohio State and will enroll early there, but they're not playing until the spring. So he's not going to play football in 2020. So there are some instances out there like that as well. So just something to keep an eye on as the season approaches.
It is the strangest year we will ever have, hopefully, knock on wood. He's Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPowersScout. Follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at NextLevelD1. Find his fine work at TexasFootball.com/recruiting. Powers, appreciate your time, my friend. And if you forget your last name, it is over your left shoulder.
Gotcha. Thank you.